Hey everyone, and welcome to lesson number 8 in the series on the spiritual disciplines. Today's lesson is about service. Now, not all of us are built this way, but many of us, we enjoy the large gesture. We enjoy the radicalness of self denial at times in our Christian walk because it feels like an adventure. We lean towards the things that are easily noticed over the things that no one sees. Or maybe we enjoy being complimented for our efforts. Many times we enjoy being seen in our discipleship over the day to day small exercises that don't get recognized. But don't feel too bad because even the disciples that walked with Jesus argued over the efforts. They said in Luke chapter 9 and verse 46, which one of us will be the greatest? And Jesus calls us to be the least, and he shows us what it is to be a servant. In John chapter 13 and verse 12 through 15, it says, when he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. Do you understand what I have done for you? Jesus asked them. You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. Jesus sets an example for us. Do as he has done. Washing feet in that time meant that you were of the least. You were no one. And Jesus shows them that this is not what is important, but what is important is serving one another no matter what. Service, by definition, is the action of helping or doing work for someone. So we're talking about the discipline of service. In Matthew chapter 20, in verse 25 to 28, the mother of Zebedee's sons comes to Jesus and asks for her sons, Jesus, have my sons, one of them sit at your right and one of them at your left. And in Matthew chapter 20 and verse 24, it says, when the 10 heard about this, when the disciples heard, they were indignant with the two brothers. And Jesus called them together and said, you know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be your slave. Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. When we explore our hearts and our view on service, we must continually ask and recenter ourselves on where we're at. So the question for us is, do we have a heart of self-righteous service or a heart of true service? And maybe you've read the chapter, or maybe you can just name some of these ideas, but I want to start with this question. You can converse about this or just think of some on your own, but what would you say describes or classifies self-righteous service? This can be described or classified by being impressed with the big deal, paying attention to the scoreboard. Maybe there's the need for external rewards or recognition for our efforts. We want the human applause. Maybe we're concerned about results in our service. Maybe we pick and choose who, what, when, where, why, and how we serve. Maybe our service is affected by our moods. Only when I feel like it will I serve. Or it's concern for self and not community. It desires glorification of the individual. That is self-righteous service. But let's explore the other side. What would you say describes or classifies the heart of true service? True service can be classified or described by it's just a response of a relationship with the Divine Father. Service overflows. Or True service doesn't distinguish between the large and the small services, and it's often drawn to the small services out of genuine love. True service is content in the hiddenness. True service is free of the need of results. True service is not discriminate in the ministry or the people that it serves. True service ministers faithfully because of the need, and it's not based on mood. True service is a lifestyle. It's a pattern of our living, and it builds community and not individualism. The discipline of true service takes great humility. Of all the spiritual disciplines, service is the most conducive to the growth of humility. When we set out to center our hearts back to true service, it forces us into denial of the flesh and recognition and into the grace of humility in the hidden work. It's service for Christ's sake. Now, let's be honest. Like we talked about at the beginning, the flesh desires what the flesh desires. Part of our walk as disciples is to continually learn to deny the human natures and its tendencies and live more in the Spirit. So I want you to consider this. Would you say that there is a difference in choosing to serve or choosing to be a servant? When we choose to serve, we still leave ourselves in charge. We decide whom we will serve and when we will serve. But when we choose to be a servant, we give up the right to be in charge. We surrender the right to decide who and when we will serve, and that makes us become available. And being available is exactly what Jesus calls us to be. It is who Jesus was. He was available to all those around him. He was a servant who came to serve. So, what is the discipline of service? Service is not a list of things that we do. There's a difference in a list and living a life of discipline of service. In the book, there's a quote that says, "It is one thing to act like a servant. It is quite another to be a servant." Service is a way of living. And as followers of Jesus, I don't see where we can separate walking as a disciple and a life of service, although we may neglect it at times in our walks. We don't have time to get into all of them, but the discipline of service goes deeper than we may think. The discipline of service is hidden service. It's service in the small things. It's the service of being served. It's the service of common courtesy. There's the service of hospitality, listening, bearing the burdens of each other, and the service of sharing the word that brings life with one another. The discipline of service is, as the book puts it, the ministry of the towel. The heart and the inward life of service that is desiring and willing to do the least because Jesus set us an example. Our prayer should always be this: Lord, as it would please you, bring me someone today whom I can serve. I have a couple questions for you to consider in conversation as we close this out. Number one, do I tend to serve because I enjoy being seen or recognized, or do I serve because it is what Jesus did? Number two, do I have a heart of self-righteous service or a heart of true service? Number three, when it comes to service, am I just choosing to serve or am I living a life of service? That's a challenging one. And finally, number four, when it comes to service, what areas can I begin to pray about to continually shape my heart? I hope this conversation was helpful as we continue our series in the spiritual disciplines. Amen.